Welcome back to another pen talk. This pen talk was inspired by Jason, Owaski Squirrel, a reviewer that has joined our ranks, and I enjoy his reviews. They're refreshing and they're interesting. So he mentioned he doesn't own a Parker 51, so it got me into thinking about some of the Parkers that I have. So here's a selection in somewhat chronological order. This first one is a Parker 45, more in the original design. It's a vacuumatic fill. This is another Parker 51. It's the demi one. It's a little bit shorter. And this one I actually took apart, cleaned it, put it back together again. It's inked and ready to go. It's an interesting advertising 51 here that you have. One may recognize an airline which no longer flies. Here's another 51. This may look like a 51, but it's actually a 21. And then I rounded it out with two 45s. Both of these I've written with quite a bit. This one here is a Daily Writer. I inked it up about 2 weeks ago. So that's the way they are. And they range in, this is from 1945. These are the late 40s. Early 50s, and these are from the late 60s, early 70s, and that's the coverage that they have. So let's look a little bit more closely at the classic 45 that we have here. We have the gold-filled cap. We have the gray, kind of maybe orange, maybe there's a little amber in there, but the jewel in the top. It's not a double jewel. It has a button filler. It's really a diaphragm, the vacuumatic filler. This one is not working, as most of my vacuumatics are not, and I have yet to get energetic enough to try to repair them. I do have all the tools and necessary parts. This one's engraved, so if Jack Knobloch is out there and he'd like his pen back, give me a buzz. The other thing we'll notice is around the bottom of the cap we have the 1/10 16 karat gold filled, which is unusual. Most of them are 12 or 14. The classic Parker jewel there, which is their lifetime guarantee. Schaefer had their white dot, while Eversharp had the double checks. So that's what Parker did. The other thing that makes this pen interesting and unique as far as a historical perspective is what Parker did at the bottom of the barrel. Hopefully you can see that as a 5 with 3 dots around it. So that's the first quarter of 1945. So that's when this pen was made. So you can really date this directly. And of course it's a Parker 51 made in USA. So this is a iconic pen. Thanks for tuning in to Pen Talk. I found this in the group of pens that I've collected. Picked it up at some flea market somewhere, probably for $1 or $2. I like the color. It's in very good shape. It's a Parker 51. Aromatic filler's in good shape. This one required a tremendous amount of work. Whatever was done, whatever ink was used, it left a white powdery residue on everything. So I had to really take the whole thing apart. It took about 2 weeks to get it to this condition. But I thought you might find it interesting to see all the little parts that go into this. You know, this was an iconic design. We can see the date of 1948, so that really establishes when this pen was made. You know, this is the section, the feed, with the breather tube, which goes up inside the filler. So this allows you to draw the ink up, push the air out, draw the ink up. So it works well. I've cleaned it up as well as I can, so we're going to assemble it and put ink to paper and see how it writes. For those who want to learn more about the Parker 51, this is an excellent book. by Dave and Mark Shepard in collaboration with Parker. They really, they did a very good job, very well made, extremely detailed, covers Parker 51 worldwide, has a little foreword by two Parker gentlemen. And like I say, it really, really is nice. And you can't forget the ink. So this is an ink has a very interesting reputation. So Parker really did market the whole thing together. And of course, this is for the 21 and the 51. If you notice, both of them are labeled there. The Parker 51 was originally introduced in 1941. So the example I have is from 1945. In 1948, Parker made two changes. One is they added an aromatic filler to the 51, and they also added the 21 to the line. So one of these is a 21 and one's a 45. One of the giveaways right away is the top of the cap. This one has a jewel. The 51 has a jewel and the 21 does not. This one has a little pointed metal top there. The clip is different. There's more feathers here. They come around to the top here. There's less feathers. Apparently that was a cost savings measure. And the other giveaway could be the 21 and the cap here, but they didn't always label them. So that's not the easy way to find out. If you look at just the pens without really thinking about it, it's very easy to confuse these two, but once you start looking for the details, then they become obvious. When you open them up, just looking at it from the section and feed and nib, you know, that's not really one you can distinguish. The 21 has a shorter barrel, looks to be about 5/8 of an inch shorter. So that's one of the things that's different. Neither of these have that Parker labeling at the bottom of the cap like we found on the 51. If you open these up, they're both aromatic converters, but as you can see, the 51, which is labeled 51 on the converter, is much longer and bigger and made nicer, where the 21 is a simpler design, you know, just a squeeze here. So that's kind of the differences. So hopefully that was useful. Parker made a couple different sizes of the 51. This shows the smaller size. I'm not really certain whether it's a demi or not, and this is the regular size one. This one I really like having in my collection, signifying, you know, the historical perspective of it. As you can see, there's a lot of similarities. I mean, the caps are similar. They both have jewels at the top. The demi is slightly smaller, not significant. The cap is the same Lustaloy type of stainless steel that they used. So that's those two. And this one, I'm going to give you two writing examples. This is going to be one of them because I showed you how this one came apart and what I did to put it in working order. To me, if you're going to collect a pen in this style, I really think the 45s are a better pen to collect. This one has just joined my daily writers, and it didn't take anything. I just flushed it out a little bit, and it was ready to write, and it writes first time every time. Nice, smooth nib. You're not going to get a lot of flex or line variation out of any of these pens. Some of the nibs might be a little soft, some of them may be a little bit stiffer, but that's about it. You know, these are all aromatic fillers. This pen, I think, was mint when I got it because everything's really tight and sticks together. As you can see, the filler in this one's kind of a compromise. It's still enclosed, but it has the same type of design like the 51 did to differ from the 21. And what makes this pen unique is the nib. This one is my first 45 that I really got into, and as you can see, it has that left oblique, like very broad nib. This thing lays down a lot of ink. So it's real quick. Let's compare just for those that might not notice that similarity. But the way that the hooded nib is done is really different between the 45 and the 51 and the 21. That's completely hooded, where this one's a little bit more exposed. If you turn it over, you know, it's a different feed system. There's also a much longer section in this one, but let's compare it to full size 51. You know, we'll just put those together, and you can see it's still larger. Speaking of hooded nibs, I don't think Parker was going to just rule the hooded nib market back in the 40s. So this is a pen. I'm going to do a full review on this later, but this is Waterman's attempt at it. It's called a taper light, and it is quite similar. I mean, it's a little bit more exposed than the 51, but very similar design here to the section. Unlike the 51, it just has a simple bladder and lever, you know, sack and lever there. This one writes phenomenally well. I enjoy this one. This one's also in my daily writing collection. That nib has some flex to it, which is quite surprising for that. And you might think this is a similar looking Waterman, but when you open this one, it has a standard nib on it. So that shows that they tried to cater to both markets. Not only the 51 market, but also the standard pen market, which was still viable in the 40s. A little bit later in the 50s, they came out with this pen, which was a cartridge. And I'd call this more of an inlaid nib, but it's still, still similar in design if you just take a look at how the nib is there. So it's another pen that I might do a more thorough review on a little later. And then getting it into a more modern category, this is another pen which I've had for a while, which I have not done a review on. And this, again, you know, kind of a compromise between inlay and hooded. And then the Chinese, not to be outdone, other than that Hero 616, which I'm not going to really talk about. Here's a no-name pen with an interesting hooded nib. I had two of these. I recently gave one to a friend, and I tuned the nib, and it wrote very, very well. I was very impressed with it. And then we all know that Lamy has been into hooded nibs. Their pens are quite known for that. So this is one I did a review on. This is a 27. This is early in Lamy's history, and it's kind of similar to what we saw in the Sailor, where it's kind of a half hooded nib, if you want to refer to it as that. This one also writes extremely well. Really nice oblique nib on there. So what Parker started with the 51 is still continuing on today. That nib design has a lot of advantages to it, and a lot of people who like it. So let's do some writing with this. This is the one I restored. And all of them have pull-off caps. They seal very securely. They all post very well, very deeply, very securely. So this is Parker 51. We'll call it a demi. Yep. Might want to spell it right. I mean, the nib is smooth, but it's very stiff, and it's on the dry side. You can see you get a little bit more flow out of it. I inked it up with this Kobe ink, which may not have been their best choice. It's number 46, which is kind of like a gray, kind of a bluish gray, dark gray. But I might want to re-ink this up with a different ink. Let's see what we do when we have more flow. Yeah, it looks a little better now. It's just not my writing experience that I enjoy. It does have a ballpoint-like quality to it, which I'm certain was one of the design factors behind this. So that's the 51. So let's go to the 45. So this is the one that I've been recently using as a daily writer. Again, very easy to post. Feels nice in the hand, good balance. But all of these pens weigh about 20 grams, so they're certainly on the light side. As you can see, it lays down a lot more ink. And the nib and tipping material don't look that much more than what's on the 51, but I just enjoy the way this writes better. You know, there's no flex to it. And this is filled with KWZ Azure number 4. I mean, I just love this as a dark blue ink. But this really glides across the paper. It's just a much nicer writing experience than the 51. And I've played with a number of 51s, and you know, maybe the nibs can be modified, maybe they can be worked on. I just not something I have a desire to do now. So let's take a look at this writing close up so you can get an idea of how that ink flows out of this. You know, no pressure is required to write. I mean, it just glides across the paper. But again, no variation. It's a pretty stiff nib, you know, has that ballpoint type feel. Interesting that Parker was able to maintain that from the early 40s all the way through their product line. Hopefully you've enjoyed this look at some pens from a famous U.S. manufacturer. Thank you for watching. May you have many writing experiences. May they all be wonderful. Till later. Bye.